Now, we want to bring in a former IDF Colonel, Miri Eason, who was in an Israeli shelter today as Iran continues to strike Israel. She's worked in intelligence in the Israeli Defense Force and later worked as a press secretary to Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. We'll bring her in now. Miri, thanks for joining us. You were listening as Iran's foreign minister was speaking. What were your takeaways from what he said?
He knows how to talk. He knows how to sell an idea. And let me tell you, he knows how to lie. I always wonder at the end if he actually knows how much he's lying, if he knows how much what he says is really not the truth. But I'm even going to put that aside. When he stands there and says, now we don't trust the West, I'd have every single one of our listeners go right now and see what the Islamic regime of Iran talks about the West day in and day out, how they have done that over the years. And in that sense, I think that what I saw was a lot of talk, rhetoric. I'm seeing it not only from him, who is speaking now in Istanbul, but I'm seeing it from all of the social media output that the Islamic regime has been putting out over the last 10 days, and certainly since what was here early this morning, the U.S. attack.
One of the interesting elements of his press conference was how much he kept stressing international law. The UN Charter had been blown up by Israel and America, but this is the same regime that brutally oppresses their own people in violation of every human rights law. They also fund terror proxies that invade other countries like Hamas on October 7. Isn't it so deeply ironic that now, when they're under attack, they are somehow resorting to international law as if they have any credibility whatsoever?
They like to play upon that aspect because they are a sovereign state. I'll remind all of us, they're a member state of the United Nations, just like Israel is a member state of the United Nations. And the law that he brought up is something that is in both the United Nations and international law. I'll add in that both when they attacked, the Islamic regime, Iran, attacked Israel in April of 2024, and when they attacked us in October of 2024, they also put out immediately that their attack then was in self-defense, and they gave that same portion of the United Nations Charter. That's where they want to play. Inside the United Nations, there are enough voices that listen to that. And I say it sadly because I absolutely look at it and go, don't we see beyond the rhetoric? And again, this isn't about Israel being perfect, but that comparison is if there's anything to compare between a very blemished democracy, which is what we are, and between the Islamic brutal regime in Iran is really a comparison I find very difficult to swallow.
The other thing I found difficult to swallow, speaking of things difficult to swallow, from that press conference was his continual appeal to the international community to see how badly Iran has been treated, how evil the Zionist regime is. And I'm listening to it thinking this is absolutely ridiculous, and yet there's a large portion of the world that will listen to him. Israel are used to being isolated. They're used to the international community being against them. But if Israel sort of moved beyond caring what the international community says, because it's a fight for existence, but nevertheless, you must have been dismayed to hear him speaking that way, knowing that so many around the globe will agree that it's Israel at fault.
So this is actually something very deep Iranian Shiite. The Iranian Shiites have always, since the revolution, since Khomeini, I say the revolution, the Islamic regime, 45 years ago, and that means 2 generations ago, they've always viewed themselves as being the underdog, as being the oppressed. And what they have done over the last 20 months, where really Israel has been vilified in the world, and the Islamic regime of Iran has deployed both itself on behalf of the Palestinians that I think Miri helped more than any Iranian or any Hamas. But when I say that, it's because Iran feels under attack, oppressed. They always have. So they're appealing as a victim. And you go, what victim? They're the ones who built over the last 45 years forces to be able to go out in the world, recruiting the different proxies that you've talked about extensively. And in that sense, they've done this over the last 10 days. They constantly tried to pose themselves as being the victims. I don't know how much we follow what they've been putting out, because here we were just listening to the Iranian foreign minister, but in social media, because most people out, younger people are not going to watch him. They're going to look on social media. And what the Islamic regime has put out in the last 10 days is in such a horrific way, showing as if Israel is attacking civilian sites, that's what they're doing, meaning the whole premise of what Israel is attacking, what we're doing in these last 10 days, how pinpointed it is, how very clearly it's the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, the air, the space, the drone, the missiles, and the nuclear. All of what they're showing is that Israel is attacking hospitals, schools, universities, and killing civilians. That's what they're putting out into social media as we speak. So that information warfare is out there. It's in social media. I want to hope that people will question that. The worst thing for me is when I see, not in Israel, it hasn't happened here, but I've seen it sadly in Australia, and I've certainly seen it in the United States, where people there are flying the Iranian regime's flag. And I'm thinking to myself, really? You're in free United States and free Australia, and you're flying the Islamic regime's flag? They're the good guy for you?
Exactly. We've received mixed signals from the US and from Israel over the last couple days about what's next, and specifically whether Ayatollah Khamenei is a target now. Do you think Israel should attempt to assassinate Khamenei? Is that what is needed to finally have regime change and once and for all end the reign of terror in Iran?
I don't think anybody should be immune from attack. And I say that very clearly. He is the head of it. He has been the ideologue since he took over as the Islamic regime's ideological leader after Ayatollah Khomeini. And it's already 35 years. That's a very long time. Having said that, taking him out, he's already announced who 3 different successors would be. We're talking about a regime who has been at the helm for 45 years. Think of the education system. When you educate people to hate, when you educate people in a certain way, that becomes part of what they are, meaning they're not only those who are opposed to the regime, and I applaud them, but that's so difficult inside such an oppressive regime. There are those who support the regime, who bite into the ideology, and I'm talking about the ideology of the regime. This isn't about Islam, and it's not about the Persian-speaking people. It's the ideology of this Islamic regime. So yes, he should be a target. That doesn't mean that taking him out will actually change it. There will be somebody else instead. The question is going to be, what happens next? Will it continue to be this very extreme, hard-line ideological regime, or will they, in the regime, find a different kind of voice? Or alternatively, that somebody will be able to oust that regime? Those are things that are not dependent on Israeli actions or on this U.S. attack on the 3 specific nuclear sites. At the end, that's going to be up to what happens inside Iran. We've impacted a lot because we've taken out so many of the top generals of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, the air, the space, the nuclear. That makes a difference. But we haven't been touching, in that sense, the governmental arena. Let them rule themselves, just not invest in nuclear terrorism and exporting those horrific proxies and capabilities around the world.
Miri, would you agree that the worst thing that could happen from here is for the Iranian regime to remain intact? Because if they're able to do that, they will be able to boast they had the worst that Israel and America could throw at them and yet survive. Their ideology would, of course, survive with them. Having started the job, Israel and America must finish it.
It's a wonderful question, comment, and I'm going to say the following. Israel degraded Hezbollah, which was a huge threat, a real threat for Israel. The whole aspect of Iran not responding is because the Islamic regime expected Hezbollah to be the response for any attack on their land. And look at Hezbollah now. Hezbollah, I'm not going to do this on TV, but when I teach and I do briefings, I really do it physically because I like to show zeros. They've done nothing, zero against Israel in the last 10 days. They've done nothing, zero, since the United States added in. That's Hezbollah, the great and mighty, backed, supplied ideology from Iran. So you can really diminish the capability. It's different in Iran because it's the regime. And as I said before, if this regime would choose to change, great. I don't think they will. They certainly will not as long as Ayatollah Khamenei is in charge. And I say all of that because the Iranian people deserve a country, the Persian history, heritage, magnificent things for the world. And exporting a very, very extreme, harsh ideology of revolution, which oppresses half of the world, is not the way to do so.
Miri, we appreciate you joining us tonight. Stay safe, and again, thank you for your time.